Hi, welcome back to the Cook's Domain. Today, I'm going to show you how to make a roast beef, and I'm talking about a proper roast beef. Beautifully caramelized on the outside, pink in the middle, and so juicy. Full of deep, savory beef flavors. Now, if you're here wanting to know how to make a roast beef, but what you've got at home is a slab of topside or silver side, what the Americans call round, whether top or bottom, then this isn't the video for you. I already have a video uploaded on how to make a roast out of those cuts. But if that's what you've got, and that's what a lot of people do use, especially here in the UK, to make a roast, then go watch my video on how you can turn that into a wonderful roast. There's only one small drawback. It won't be pink in the middle. Go and watch that video and I explain it in full there so you know why and why all the TV chefs are lying to you, because all they're trying to do is fulfill your visual expectation when they cook a topside and they make it all pink in the middle and it looks so delicious, but isn't edible. I've just had so many people say to me, I've cooked a top rump, a top side, and it just isn't edible. It looks delicious, but it isn't edible. So go watch that video, because that's the one for you. But if you've got a sirloin joint, sirloin on the bone, or even better, the fore-rib, which is the front four ribs of the animal, also known as prime rib in the United States, then this is the video for you. We're going to make an amazing roast beef. Okay, so the first thing we want to do, once we've got our beef, we've got it from our butcher, quality piece of fore-rib or prime rib as the Americans call it. First thing we need to do is salt it. Now, if you're cooking this today, don't salt it. Wait till you're going to cook it and then just salt it and put it in the oven. But this is a step that I take because it just breaks it down a little more, cures the meat a little bit, makes it even more tender and even more delicious. And that's salting it for 12, 14, 16 hours before we want to cook it. Now, why is there a difference between 14 hours and 5 minutes, for example? Well, salt does two things when you apply it onto meat. First thing it does is draw all the moisture out. And like I said in the other video, that sounds really bad, right? Because it would be. You don't want to draw the moisture out. But what happens is this. The salt draws the moisture out over the first few hours of us salting it. But then that salt will fully dissolve into that liquid. There'll be nothing more it can draw out. Then the beef itself then starts to suck that liquid back in. But now that's a salty liquid. So we're seasoning on the inside. And salt does what it does, is tenderizing. So it's making an already beautifully tender piece of beef even more so it's going to be nice and juicy. Now, of course, I watch videos online on YouTube like everybody else, and mostly because if I can find a video that gives you, in my opinion, the perfect instruction on how to do this, I'll just refer you to that. But I haven't found one. Lots of different people do elements that I think are right and lots of things that I think are wrong. And one very popular YouTuber salted this 3 hours before she cooked it and left it at room temperature. So basically, she put the salt on, it drew the moisture out roughly in that 3 hour period. And then when she went to cook it, she dried the meat and put it in the oven. So, I mean, it goes to show me that so many chefs don't actually know why they do what they do. They've just been shown to do something a particular way, and that's what they just keep doing. There's no thought process applied. So this is why I say to you, if you're going to cook it today, don't salt it yet. Don't salt it, not even an hour. You're going to make it worse. Salt it 5 minutes before you put it in the oven. At least then we're getting some salt on it, and during the cooking process we'll get some sort of seasoning in there. But if you do it an hour or 2 hours or 3 hours before, all you're doing is robbing this piece of beef of its moisture, of its juiciness. So we don't want to do that. If you do have the time ahead of you, do what I'm going to do now. I'm going to salt this whole thing with a lot of salt, to be fair, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge for 12, 14, 16 hours, depends on what time I get to cook it tomorrow. Now, there's another popular YouTuber who does do this. And I was quite surprised because vast majority of people do not tell you to do this. But a very popular guy does, except for one small problem that I noticed. He then sat his beef on a rack in the fridge. So all the juices just fall off it and sit underneath it. This is a completely pointless endeavor. We want the beef sitting in every bit of juice that that the salt's going to draw out. So what I do to make sure I get a nice even seasoning is for the first 6-8 hours, I just let it sit in the fridge as you see it. For the last 6-8 hours, I will turn it onto its side in that pool of liquid. And then for the last 4 hours, turn it into that pool of liquid, that salty liquid. And by the time I'm ready to cook with it, the entire bowl will be dry and the beef would have sucked all that moisture back in and will be ready to cook with it. So let's do that first. Okay, so you're going to want to use a coarse salt for this. Let's get it on its side. And I know this does seem like it's a lot of salt, but it really isn't. This is a huge piece of meat. So let's get it on there. Now, there's not a lot of reason to salt the underside, but I still do it anyhow. Especially here on the edges where the bones are. I'm sure there's some sort of osmosis there. Now for the top, I do something slightly different. You don't have to do this, it's up to you, because usually your beef comes nicely strung by the butcher. But I'm now going to remove my string because I want to do something to this fat, and then I'm going to restring it. But like I said, you don't have to do that if you don't want to. Okay, so with the string now removed, what I do is I do cross hatches on the fat. And I'll tell you why, if we salt the fat, the salt's not going to get through this. So what I want to do is get right through to the fat and just nick the meat. All right, we don't want to go too deep. We just want to nick the meat just a little bit. So we've gone through the fat and we've just nicked the meat, as you can see in there. And you want to do this all along the fat. Just do a cross hatch. And now we can go the other way. Perfect. Now, the purpose of this is to get salt in between these cuts, which will sink down into the meat. Really jam the salt in there. So spread the cuts and jam the salt in and go all the way along. Now what I want to do is get a little bit of salt, just a little bit all over it. Push it down, and the fat will just take that down with it. Okay, now we've got a lot of salt on our board. We don't want anything to go to waste. And all this salt has a job to do. So let's just roll it around in there. Okay, so now that we've salted it, we need to string it. Now, why string it? Now, because right now the beef is quite firm, so it's keeping itself together. But as you cook it, and all these fat layers here, let me show you all the fat layers. There's a lot of fat layers in this. You see here and here and here. They're all going to start to melt and it's all going to start to loosen, and we want to keep it shape. So we want to get some butcher's twine, and you just want to tie it between the bones. So about there. Bring it up. You want to make it relatively tight, but just to keep it together. Okay. Next thing we want to do is take the bowl that we're going to keep it in for the next 18 hours and just sit it in. That is all we have to do. Now it's got to go in the fridge. Do not cover it, do not put any plastic wrap on it. You need it unwrapped, uncovered in the fridge, just like this, for the next 12, 14, 16 hours, or however long you want to leave it until it does what it does. Okay, let's do that. Okay, so our beef is out of the fridge, and we need it to come up to room temperature, or that's what all the experts say. I can tell you now that bringing up a piece of beef like this up to room temperature isn't going to take 1 hour, as many YouTube videos and celebrity chefs suggest, nor even 3 hours, as a minority of YouTube celebrities and chefs, etc., also claim. This has been out of the fridge for almost 4 hours, and I can show you the reading. We're at 10 degrees. We started off at 3 coming out of the fridge. So to get this to room temperature, which I've measured is 22 degrees in this room, it's going to take about 12 hours, I would have thought, something ridiculous like that. So clearly that's not what they're doing. So why they say that, I have no idea. So I've never ever taken a piece of beef out of the fridge and left it for that long out on the counter. I'm not sure that's a good thing. 3 hours is what I've always done. I always thought that was about right, but I thought I'd test it and see what kind of temperature we have in the middle of this beef after three hours or so. and it's nowhere near room temperature. But I know that cooking it from now is going to create a great piece of beef. So I would say stick with the timings on this. Have it out for about 3 hours and forget the whole nonsense about room temperature, because that's clearly not accurate. Throw in some vegetables in here, or a trivet as it's called, but I'm not going to use it as a trivet, and I'll explain why. So firstly, I've chopped up some carrots. I've got 3 large carrots here. I've also chopped up 2 stalks of celery and 4 or 5 large cloves of garlic. Skins on, none of these things have been peeled or anything, just skins on, straight in. Right, this is my next point. A lot of the celebrity chefs take whole bulbs of garlic and cut it down and throw it in there. I've never done that in the past, but I have done it, since noticing, all the, the experts saying to do that. And a couple of times what I got was a really garlicky gravy, like way over the top, way too powerful gravy. And I can't believe that anybody actually would like that. And I love garlic. I could eat it raw. I just thought my gravy was ruined. A couple of times, some of these pieces just ended up above my liquid level, or if you roast your beef without any liquid at all, they burn. And there's nothing worse than burnt garlic ruining your gravy. So for me, it's 4 or 5 cloves. Now, if you want to slice a whole bulb and throw it in like Jamie Oliver does, or what have you, do it. It's your gravy, you're the one who's going to eat it. I put about 4 or 5 cloves, and I think that's more than enough. I've also got 2 onions here, which I'm also going to just chuck in here. Skins on and everything. I had a red one going, so I thought I'd throw that in there as well. But it doesn't matter, red, white, brown, whatever you call them, yellow. It doesn't matter, just get them all in there. Now, ordinarily, you would sit the beef on this. That's what a trivet means. Thing is, I'm going to add some liquids to this, and I don't want my beef to be sitting in liquid. But what I do want the beef to do is, as the fat melts and bastes the beef and then drops, it will drop into this, into the bottom of our pan. And with these vegetables and the garlic, we're going to produce a beautiful, rich gravy. So to add, what we add to this is half a cup of red wine, or 125 milliliters. And we're going to add 500 milliliters of beef stock. So get that in there as well. So now we have a lot of fluid in here. Now, I then add a rack. Now, I don't have a rack that fits perfectly on this particular thing, but as you can see, the beef is now going to be sitting above the tray. Let me grab that now and put that on there. All right, and there we go. Now, we don't have to salt it. As you know, we've salted it plenty, but we do want to add some pepper on here. So start grinding some pepper, as much as you're comfortable with. Remember, a lot of this is going to fall off and melt off, but a lot of it is going to season our beef. Let me twist it over. Let's get some pepper on this side as well. Now, the next step is up to you, what you choose to do. You can smother this in mustard if you like. I don't do that. You can smother it in butter if you like. I don't do that either. I just want a very traditional kind of British roast beef here. You also can put some herbs. Now, a lot of people do want to put the herbs on the beef. I don't do that because it burns. So what I'm going to do is just add some thyme, some fresh thyme or some dry thyme, whatever you have, straight into the bottom here with my onions and so it infuses those herbs into it. And you can do whatever you like. You can add rosemary if you like, sage, whatever is your favorite type of herbs or a combination that you think goes with roast beef. Do what you like. It's your meal. I'm showing you how to do this. The creativity is up to you. Okay, so how are we going to roast this beautiful piece of meat? Well, there's 2 methods out there. One I've had more success with, and one not so much, I have to say. The most common way, at least here in the UK, would be to calculate the weight or read the weight off the packet, and then you cook the beef for 20 minutes, say, per 500 grams or something. And it all depends on whether you want it well done or medium or rare, and there's a formula for that. But another very popular way for cooking fore-rib or prime rib is to set your oven to a very, very high setting, about 260 degrees Celsius, which is about as high as my oven goes for a domestic oven, which is about 500 degrees Fahrenheit. And again, going by the weight, 5 minutes per pound. So my particular joint is 6 pounds. So that would be 30 minutes at that high heat. You would then turn the oven off completely, keeping the joint in the oven. Don't open the door, don't touch the door. Leave it for 2 hours just sitting in there. And that works too. You get a beef that is somewhere between rare and medium rare, very pink all the way through. But there's a lot of people who don't want to eat their beef that rare. I mean, the color is closer to medium rare, but the texture is closer to rare. So if you like that almost raw meat kind of texture, then you're going to love that method. So what I do is somewhere in between. I've always said to you guys, get a food thermometer, a food probe. And the way I do it is, again, set the oven 260 degrees, 500 degrees Fahrenheit, roast it for as many minutes as it takes for its weight. So mine's 6 pounds, like I said, by 5 minutes, that's 30 minutes at that temperature. Then I turn the oven off. But what I do is, instead of 2 hours, I will keep the probe in and constantly measure the temperature of the beef. And I will stop it when it hits 55, 56 degrees Celsius in the center of the joint. That's where medium rare kicks in, around 55 degrees. So that's the bottom end, and 57, 58 is the top end of medium rare. Once you start going over that, you go into the medium range, if you will. So I want mine to be bang in the middle of medium rare. I don't want that rare texture, but I don't want it overcooked. And I think medium's a little overcooked for me. I know for some people that's not, the case. But we can all agree that well done's no good, right? I'm glad we agreed on that one. But yeah, so what I do is I have the temperature probe, and if it takes more than 2 hours, it takes more than 2 hours. Okay, so our beef has come to temperature. It's hit 56 degrees. And all we want to do now is take it off the rack, put it on our cutting board, get a large piece of foil, and just tense it. But don't make the gaps too small or too tight around it. We want the air to be able to flow around it. We don't want any condensation on the inside. So just put it over, and we're going to leave it now for 30 minutes to relax and rest. And put that to one side. Okay, so now we want to make our gravy. We want to get the same tray and put it straight onto the hob or the stove. Put it on a high heat, and we want to start mashing down these vegetables. Once it starts bubbling, we can turn it down to medium. As you can see, this is really thick, so we're going to add some hot water to loosen all of this up. Now with a tea strainer or a fine mesh sieve, start to slowly sift in some flour and stir, because we don't want any lumps. Okay, so once we've sieved everything through and we've got our liquid, we can now just simmer it down until we get a thickness that we like. But we can also taste it now for seasonings. That's a rich beefy flavour. Can do with a little salt, a couple of grinds of black pepper. As soon as we've got it up to boiling temp, we can now reduce the heat to medium and just simmer it down till we get the thickness that we want. Now remember, you're never going to get it super thick this way, but I like my gravy to be a little bit on the runny side. It's more how you would get it served in a fancy restaurant. But if you are looking for that thick, almost gluey, the only equivalent I can think of here in the UK, I don't think it'll make much sense to Americans, is like Bisto looking. You can only do it with corn flour, what the Americans call cornstarch. Dilute a full heaped teaspoon of corn flour with a little cold water, mix it well so you get this white paste. Pour that into this whilst whisking, and you will get that Bisto-like consistency. Okay, so our beef has been resting for half an hour, 30 minutes. Let's cut it and see where we're at. The first thing I'm going to try and do is to cut off the bones. Okay, now what I want to do is just try and follow the bone line. I'll work my way down, and as it curves, follow that curve all the way to the bottom there. And what you can do is you can keep these, you can put them back in the oven, get them tender, and enjoy a couple of delicious ribs. Okay, so the moment of truth. Let's see what we have here. Now obviously these outer portions are going to be more well done. Okay, let's see what these pieces are like. Look at that, perfectly medium rare. So tender. If you remember my top side, silver side video, I was cutting it razor thin and you couldn't eat it. I mean, I choked on it. But in comparison, look at that. Look how thick this is. And it's like butter. Absolutely delicious. Now, if you want it pinker than this, just follow the American method. Highest temperature for the weight, 30 minutes. Turn off the oven, leave it for 2 hours, and it will probably be coming out around the 49-degree mark. With a bit of resting, it will go up to 52, and it'll be a lot pinker than this. But this is exactly where I want it, and it is delicious. And there we have it. 2 thick pieces of beautiful medium rare beef, just the way we like it. This I stopped this at 56. It climbed to 58 during resting. So it's just at the very top end of medium rare, just where I like it. A couple of degrees before medium. All we need now, just to finish it off, is a spoon of horseradish, which goes excellently with beef, and some of our delicious gravy. Get some in that Yorkshire pudding as well. Perfect.